and welcome back to the LGBT Diaries. I am your host, Gwen Broadfield. I thank you for listening this far, and I really hope that you continue. Your support means everything to me and to my grade. So in today's episode, we'll be interviewing Cassidy. So Cassidy is an amazing girl. I've known her for a while now. And so she's very small and she's very quiet, but she has the biggest opinion. She stands her ground and she tells you why. She doesn't let you change her opinion. She knows that in her own way she is right. And so I've decided to give her a really big topic: legislation in the community. We're going to discuss laws and perspectives and just really get into it. But before we do that, we need to get personal. We need to hear about her experiences and her feelings, her hopes for the community. And so I just ask that throughout this episode and throughout the rest of your listening experience that you don't judge her or criticize her, because she is as welcome to her opinion as you are to yours. So without further ado, this is Cassidy. Please state your name, age, and what part of the community you represent.
Hi, my name is Cassidy Orr. I'm 16, and I did identify as a lesbian, but now I identify as queer.
Okay, and what is your definition of a lesbian?
So I define lesbian as a homosexual woman who, basically a girl who's sexually and romantically attracted to other girls.
Okay. What is your opinion of the portrayal of lesbians in the media?
Oh gosh. Jeez. One of the worst stereotypes, I think, is how, binary it is, how media sees either lesbians as either butch with flannels and they got a baby pit bull and a U-Haul, or they're really feminine and they're just experimenting and they've only been with a girl once. I would love to see, actual lesbians portrayed in media rather than just fake stereotypes that people perceive from our community.
Do you think there's enough coverage of the LGBT community in the media?
Obviously no. I don't think there will ever be enough coverage in the media. I would love to see more, personally, because I just can relate to it, and I love being able to, see myself in characters. So, yeah, I would definitely say put a lot more LGBT members in media, and I say that would get our point across.
Have you ever been told that you're too young to know your sexuality?
Oh, definitely. I came out when I was 13, so a lot of people just thought I was in that weird, confused stage, which honestly wasn't the case for me. I knew I was gay at a very, very young age, so for me it was very easy to figure out just because I knew. I just, could feel it. So I personally don't think I was too young. A lot of people say I was too young, but I don't believe that at all.
Okay. Could you tell me your coming out story, or one of them?
Okay, I'm gonna give you my coming out story takes about 6 months, because it was just a wild journey. But I'll tell you about my family. So it was spring fling, and my best friend at the time, Catherine, we went with one another as a joke. And we were taking pictures, and I was planning to kiss her on the cheek, but she was planning to kiss me on the cheek, and we didn't really quite communicate that, and we accidentally kissed in front of everyone at the dance, even the chaperones. And word went around school, everyone heard about it, people were talking about it for a day or two. It wasn't that extreme, but I kind of took advantage of all this gossip, and I came out to everyone. Kat obviously didn't do the same, but I did, and a lot of people thought I intentionally kissed her, which wasn't the case. That was a complete accident. But yeah, I would just say I took advantage of that, and I also knew my parents would hear about it because they got emails. So when my dad and my brother were gone for a ski trip, because I wanted to tell my parents separately, I went to my mom, and it was like late at night. She was making me a grilled cheese. I wasn't even wearing pants. And I like turned on the lights because it was dark in there, and I made her stop what she was doing, and I kind of just like started explaining the whole story and saying how I was gay and how I felt this way and how I've known for so long. And obviously, I am very thankful to live in such like forgiving, like wanting equality family that's just very loving. So I was immediately accepted, which definitely family acceptance is a big part of the coming out process. So that was great. But that was before the dance, so I came out to my mom before that dance situation even happened. So after the dance, I came home that night and I was just crying. I was completely in tears because I knew I would have to tell my dad. And I don't know why I was so fearful. I knew he would accept me, like deep down, but it was just saying it was the hard part. Because even though I had came out to people beforehand, it was so hard for me to even comprehend that this is who I am. And it was just difficult, really. I can't even like put into words. So I come home, I'm crying, my makeup's a mess, and my mom takes me to the side. She's like, "You probably need to tell your dad. He's wondering what's going on." So I sit down next to my dad on the couch. My mom is sitting on the other side of me, and I start to tell him. And he immediately is just like, "I don't care. Like, I love you no matter what." And it was probably one of the best things I've ever heard in my life, just because I've gone through years of struggling and trying to find myself and who I am, and for my parents to just stand there and just say, "We love you no matter what," it was just so great to hear. I can't even like explain it, but just that's the best way I can do it.
So you already kind of said this, but could you just specify like how important do you think family acceptance is in the coming out process?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because what's going through the process of trying to find your identity is that you can't really accept yourself. So when you have peers and family members who accept you, that whole accepting yourself and trying to love yourself despite this is definitely a way easier process, because just going through that stage like by yourself is so hard that I think just having a support system that accepts you and loves you is just a great way to get through that.
So you said loving yourself despite that. Do you think that you've been like, that society has been kind of trained to push away and neglect LGBT representation in the community?
Geez, I'm just trying to like collect my thoughts. I have so many opinions. It's just hard to like narrow it down to one. But I would say there was a very long period where, cause 12, 13, that's such like an awful stage in life in general. So when you're dealing with your sexuality on top of that, it's a nightmare, honestly. So having the media, I think the media has definitely gotten better at accepting LGBT community, but during that time period, it wasn't really like that. So the media was definitely not very forgiving to gays and lesbians. So I wasn't given a support system on the internet. I wasn't able to come out to people and have a support system in where I lived and with the people I loved. So it really was just like a man versus man battle where I was against myself trying to figure it out. So I say, if media was more accepting, if family and peers were more vocal and accepting about it, then I definitely think the coming out process for LGBT members would be a whole lot more easier, and they would be a whole lot more comfortable.
Do you think it's harder to come out as a teenager or as an adult?
I think there's struggles to both. They're both very hard. The struggles I see with a teenager is people either say you're too young or you just don't know, and they just think you lack experience with that area of expertise, so they don't know what to think. And truthfully, I don't really think you need expertise in that area to even know. It's like seeing food you think is really, really bad. I'm just trying to give an example. It's like seeing food, you look at it, you smell it, you know you don't like it, so you're not gonna eat it. It's the same way. I looked and saw guys, and I just knew I don't want that. So I don't need to try it to know I don't want it. Does that make sense? But with being an adult, I think the problem is that people have, because when you come out as an adult, what mainly is the problem is that you have dated people in the past of the opposite sex, so people know you have experience in that area, yet they don't understand why it's not really a transition, you just know your whole life. It's just a matter of figuring it out.
And being able to accept yourself because of it and be comfortable enough to tell the people that you care about.
Yeah, definitely. So I say with being an adult, it's just people think they've been lied to, or they just thought you knew who you were. Like,
here's your family, try to make it about themselves rather than the person who is coming out.
Oh my gosh, thank you for bringing up that point. That's exactly what I was trying to say. Jeez. It's so true, though. When I was coming out, people, like, immediately, like, changed the discussion to themselves and how, like, they thought about it, and I really was just standing there, like, I could care less about what you think. It's just a matter of me being in an environment where people care about me. So I need to know whether you do love me or you don't. Because if you don't, you need to get out of here.
So just to give you a little perspective, so we've been friends for a while. And so she came out to me when we were in 7th grade. And so she pulled me out during lunch, and she, like, pulled out our little friend group, and she was like, hey, I just wanted you guys to know that, like, I'm a lesbian, I like girls, and I just wanted you guys to know that because you're important to me. And so every person, like, they went down the line, they're like, oh my gosh, how could you have not told us this? And it comes to me, and I just go, okay, can I go back to lunch now? Because I was like, I kind of, like, either I guess this, or, like, it doesn't really matter to me. Like, that's your business, that's not mine.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to make this about myself or about anybody else, because you're the one who's going through this.
In the moment, it was really funny.
Okay, so, moving away from, like, coming out, do you think the mistreatment of LGBT youth comes more from their peers or from adults?
I read this question, and I thought the same way I did with coming out as a teenager or adult. Like, both of them have struggles. I think with peers, definitely in a school environment, not really ours, because we live in such, like, a small community that, like, we've grown up with everyone for, like, our entire lives. So with that kind of, like, family environment, it was very easy to be accepted. But I think at a public school or a school of, like, that size, it would be so hard to be accepted because people are just constantly judging you. It's such a social hierarchy. It's terrible. And with adults, mainly family, when they don't accept you, like, people you've loved your entire life and who you thought loved you their not entire lives, but you get what I mean. It's hard. It is. I had family members who I didn't come out to at all just because I knew they wouldn't accept me beforehand. So I didn't want to tell them and deal with that rejection. I couldn't do that. So I just didn't say anything at all. So with adults, I say the main issue with mistreatment is that, like, you look up to these people, yet now you see that they look down at you just because of this one small aspect about yourself.
Okay, and so my last question for this section is one that I think is pretty important to you. What would you say to someone who's afraid to come out?
I read this question and immediately knew my answer. In my coming out process, I was not given time to come out when I was comfortable. So I say, especially if you're young, just wait until you're comfortable. If you're in a stage in life where you're pretty sure you're this, or you're pretty sure you're that, then just go with it. Labels in general don't matter. You can switch them up in life. You can figure out who you are. Like, it doesn't matter. Heck, it was even a process to go from lesbian to queer and to start dating a guy, and that process was a mess. People were confused, they didn't understand. Just don't care about what others think, because this is your journey. This is your own self-discovery. That it doesn't matter what others think of you or who they are or anything. Just go at your own pace and only care about yourself. This is the one moment in your life where you can be selfish and you can do what you want.
Okay, so now we're going to discuss legislation and the community. First, I'm just going to ask you some general questions about the issue, and then we'll move into some more specifics. Sound good?
Yep.
Okay, so how involved should the government be with the community?
With politics and getting married, obviously the government has to come into, because gay marriage was illegal for the longest time, which should not have happened to even begin with. Like, I don't even know how they thought of it, but no, government should not be involved. Like, this is a personal citizen issue. Government should be dealing with the economy and financials and all of that jazz. Not me and wanting to marry this Victoria's Secret model, like.
Okay, so now I would like to talk to you about some laws in the United States, mostly in Texas, just because that's where we're from, and I just wanted to gain your perspective on them. Texas has a statute for LGBT hate crimes, and it strengthens punishment, but it has never been invoked.
I actually knew about this. I wrote, not a paper, we did that research portfolio. I talked about this a lot and how they're not invoked. But they definitely do exist, and they should be. People should be punished for discrimination against anyone.
So do you believe that there should be a statewide law banning LGBT discrimination?
Definitely. LGBT members need to be protected from any sort of physical or mental violence. You get what I mean? Just any discrimination should have laws or acts that prevent them.
Okay, so Texas does not have a statewide law banning LGBT discrimination, and there are only 2 counties that have LGBT protections, is what it states it as. So Dallas County and Walker County. And so for Dallas County, I'm just going to say that because that's near where we live, it only applies to private employment, and county contractors. So it's not very effective already. And so do you think that there needs to be a statewide law?
There definitely needs to be a statewide law, but I think that has no chance of happening, definitely with the politics that Texas goes by.
Okay, so do you know what anti-LGBT curriculum laws are?
Can I guess?
Why not?
Thanks. I'm gonna guess, based off how it says curriculum, that you can't discuss LGBT concepts in, school curriculum.
So they're also known as the No Promo Homo laws, and so the Wikipedia page defines it as, quote, a series of laws approved by various U.S. states that prohibit or limit the mention or discussion of homosexuality and transgenderism in public schools, end quote. So essentially, the teachers, they can't talk about LGBT topics in class, and now it does mostly apply to sex ed courses. They cannot discuss safe sex for gay couples. And so, as you would have most likely guessed, Texas is one of the 7 U.S. states that has those laws. So, what do you think about that?
Geez, that's just not okay. You would think like teachers who truly care about their students would want to make them safe, especially with that. Like, there's so many risks. It's probably why, like, the AIDS definitely was a problem of the past, but I think the reason why it was so high was because people just weren't educated. So I think it's a teacher's duty to educate kids on that, despite their sexuality.
Okay, and so my final question for you is, do you think there should be a law that prevents the LGBT discrimination of teenagers? Because there are various laws that protect adults, especially in the workplace or for housing and just like legislation and all of that, but there are very few or no laws that protect teenagers, especially in schools.
I definitely think teenagers of the LGBT community need to be protected at schools, at the workplace, just throughout their entire lives. Just because that is such a burden to carry on your shoulder that you need to be protected and to feel safe, and that is a human right.
So, now just to close out the podcast, I would like to ask you about transgender rights. The subject has been highly debated in the last year, and I just kind of wanted to gain perspective from a member of the community. So, why do you think it's such an issue for transgender people to be able to serve in the military?
I didn't even know it was an issue to begin with. Not going to lie. I think a lot of it has to do with just politics and people just being against the community in general, that obviously they wouldn't let transgender people join the military if they don't even think gays or lesbians can.
Do you think transgender people should be able to use the bathroom of their choice?
Definitely. I actually have a very good example of this. My cousin Ryan, he's trans. He has had top surgery. He's taken testosterone. He has a full-on beard. Like, imagine him walking into the women's restroom. That's crazy. And it would feel creepy. Transgender people, whether they have transitioned or not, should use whatever bathroom they wish to use. And although people think that would make them uncomfortable, I think it would make both parties uncomfortable if they weren't able to choose.
And what do you think about people who say, like, well, then men can just go into the women's restrooms and say that, like, they're trans so that they can spy on girls?
I think you can tell the difference between a guy dressed up as a girl and a trans woman very easily. Like, you can just look at them and know.
Do you think that there are people in the LGBT community that don't support transgenders?
I definitely think so. I think people and their views of politics, whether they're in the LGBT community or not, they are just different. I have definitely seen people who are gay, but they're against transgender people, or I've seen transgender people against gay rights, and it just really matters as to like what someone's morals are or their values.
So, why do you think it's so difficult for cisgender or straight people to understand the concept of being transgender?
I think it lies between social norms and just the binary. A lot of people just can't understand it because that is something they've just never have experienced. And because of that lack of experience, they aren't able to comprehend what that person is going through.
Why do you think family acceptance is so much harder for transgenders rather than other parts of the community?
I would have to say, and I'm just thinking this from my own perspective, is you say you have a girl and you think that person is a girl their entire lives and they come out as a guy. Obviously, it's going to be a shock, but you have to accept them. And I think a lot of people struggle between like what they thought that person was and going through the acceptance stage, and that confusion can really make someone angry. And I definitely believe, definitely in a place like Texas where that concept isn't really accepted, that a lot of parents just don't want to deal with it and they just want a quote unquote normal kid.
Some states require a person to have gender reassignment surgery in order to be recognized as their preferred gender. Do you think that's necessary?
I definitely don't think that is necessary at all. Whether you have transitioned or not, but you identify as transgender, you are trans. No matter what others say, you are trans if you say you are.
And so, this is my final question of the podcast. Do you think the treatment of transgender people will improve in the next few years?
I hope so. If not, then I'm really disappointed in society. But I definitely wish for trans people, for the LGBT community in general, that we just get accepted for who we are.
Okay, and that is all for episode 2. I thank you for your support, and I hope that you continue to listen. I thank Cassidy for joining us today and giving her perspective on everything, and I hope that you take her perspective and you don't judge it, but it helps you to understand more of the community. And just as a little addition, if you are queer or questioning, or you have questions on anything, and you need help, please contact the Trevor Project at 1-866-488-7386.